Wow, what a program. Let's give those speakers another round of applause. I mean, really, it is a humbling experience to follow that program that ran through this morning. But it's a real privilege to be here. I am feeling, I mean, this is a highly educated, intelligent, attentive crowd. And in particular, there's a lot of pressure here after that performance. My bride, who I met in middle school, who's sitting on, she is tough. Just as I stood up to come here, I heard her say, well, it's been a lively, informative program so far.
Wow.
So we'll just see where it goes. Rick Mullaney, my wingman, law is policy, and public policy was my my field when I was in private practice in other higher education places. He is the fastest talking Southerner I have ever run into. Just in terms of word count, he can give a 60-minute talk in 7 minutes. It's really, I hope I acquire that talent someday. It's really good. I feel like we're Lonsman from New York. It's great. We heard a lot from these great speakers, and I want to tell you that, just to start with, that it really is a privilege and a welcome opportunity to speak with leaders of the business community, leaders of the Jacksonville civics and academic community, because it's just an opportunity to try to convey to you not only our appreciation for the support you've been giving to the new College of Law, and it is your support that sets us apart, the university platform that sets us apart, but it's also what makes success our only option. We're enormously grateful, and I feel a very heavy obligation, personally, but everybody at the school does too, the College of Law. We feel a heavy obligation to not only provide our new students with the highest quality anywhere, not just another law school, the highest forward-looking quality legal education that you can get anywhere from day one. These new students, from day one, we potentially have a small group. We've got everything we need to provide them with the finest education. They're not guinea pigs. They're getting a tremendous education, and we're doing that. Okay, I gave up bragging for Lent, but Lent is over. So forgive us. The second is that we want to build in ethics, professionalism, and in effect be part of what a great university like this one is, which is it's the field hospital for dealing with the issues and problems and injured democracies and concerns and the problems of our day. And that's what this university is doing, is equipping people for a purpose when they leave to make a difference, to be able to handle these tough issues and have the knowledge to do that. And the third thing is, I feel a heavy obligation to get this provisional accreditation, which we deserve. We made a compelling case. And I'll tell you that the site visit team from the American Bar Association arrives tomorrow night. But the opportunity to be, I should be worrying, but we've got great people who do that worrying for me, and preparing, we've got great people who are doing that. So I have the privilege and pleasure of speaking to you. But what I want to do is to convey to you that we are very conscious that the other thing we really must do is to repay the investment that all of you are making with your effort, your energy, your psychic mentoring, and your financial support. So thank you very much for that. So now to the topic. I really, if there's a question and we have time for a question, I'd be happy to be prompted to talk about the law school, but I'm going to resist doing that directly. I'll start by maybe keying off some of the things that we talked about. So the news flash, the takeaway from Dr. Touchton is that AI has been with us for a long time. It's no new thing. And it's no new thing in many ways because every time there's a new technology breakthrough, society reacts to it the same way. It's nervous, it's scared, there's disruption, it takes much longer than you think to get used to it. Our friend from North Dakota, where is he? Hanging right here? There he is. So, you know, I was at, my roommate before, Marla was my roommate overseas in Oxford, was from Crystal, North Dakota, right up on the Canadian border, big potato farm, which we visited a couple times. You know, it says, "Welcome to Crystal" on both sides of the sign. It's a small place. But he was the smartest guy I ever met. But I think that your charts and graphs demonstrated with those S-curves and so on, and those multiple S-curves, that we still have a long way to go, which is kind of surprising. And that's nothing new, because with these new technological breakthroughs, Ecclesiastes 1:9, there's no new thing under the sun. I mean, Socrates complained that when his students wanted, his pupils wanted to use the new technology of paper and ink to write instead of chiseling things into stone or just talking about things, he thought it was cheating. He thought it interfered with the pupil-teacher relationship. He thought there were privacy implications. Sound familiar? Right. And when the Greeks kind of figured out how to have drama outdoor and put on productions to challenge the government and hold up a mirror to society, Plato, Socrates' student, he was concerned about too much sex, too much violence, you never know when to bring the kids. I'm paraphrasing. But so, what I mean to say, and so the great challenge for us, and that's what this incredible program has already done, is to understand what's similar and then to figure out what's really profoundly different and then adjust and adapt to it, especially with respect to tools, which distinguishes humans from most of the beasts. Some of them know how to use them, but we've always developed tools, and every tool known in history of civilization, in the history of humankind, has had pluses and minuses. You know, the wheel can run over you. Last time I checked, that's what we used to get around with, right? And I'm not making light of some of the worrisome aspects of what the topic is today, and there are some major worrisome aspects. Dr. Touchton talked about how long it's been with us since the Turley 1950-52 revelation of the Turing test. He was a huge brain. There's been movies made about him and so on. The same year, 1952, and Marla and I have been in the pub in Cambridge, in England, where on a couple of napkins, Watson and Crick developed the outline for their article that won the Nobel Prize about deoxyribonucleic acid, the structure of DNA, which was the birth of our modern medical biological innovation. And they set the stage by finding the repetitive pattern of the amino acids, adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. It's always good when you hear some new material. Not bad for a lawyer, huh? You see, the reason Marla is smiling is because in middle school and high school, she always tried to copy off my science papers. And I wouldn't let her, and I was wondering why it was so hard to get her to go out. But in any event, that led eventually, of course, to the Human Genome Sequencing Project, and this incredible, so we've now in this dual period, and they're interrelated, of advanced digital innovation and biological innovation, and they're both reinforcing each other, actually, with some major questions, which I might get to if I can focus a little bit more. And now, with respect to our familiarity, which is one of the big takeaways, everybody should raise their hand we're all extremely familiar with AI, and yet we are not so good at knowing when we're using it, or much less predicting what the future will be. I recently spoke, and some of you might have heard me say, how bad businesses have been historically, especially in the United States, in predicting the great technological innovations and what they're going to result in when they eventually expand and succeed. So, you know, the Pony Express was overtaken by the telegraph. It only lasted 18 months. The telegraph company, the predecessor of Western Union, made the decision that the telephone is never going to work and didn't really invest to become a telephone. When they had wire laid already, it's kind of interesting to think about that. Jack Warner, the American U.S. Patent Office said in the age of the Titanic that everything that's ever been invented has already been invented. I think they missed it by a little bit. That's the U.S. Patent Office. And Jack Warner at Warner Studios in the 1920s said, who the hell wants to hear actors speak? Right? So, kind of got that wrong. And the head of IBM, much later, half a century ago, said, there's only a need after ENIAC was invented, the first major mainframe, I guess, in the United States. He said, well, there's probably the capacity and desire for 5 computers in the school, in the world, and who would ever want a computer in their home? All right, so I'm just, and you can go, I collect these because I think they're fascinating. But we are actually very, very familiar already. And one of the things that fascinates me is that, and you know, maybe, Mark, you have an idea why this is the case, is that while businesses make often poor choices, Hollywood and novelists get it right decades, if not generations ahead. So you got Jules Verne talking about going to the moon, or getting around the world in fast, quickly. How many people here, raise your hand, have seen Top Gun Maverick? Okay, all right. Val Kilmer spoke through the power of AI to take his speech, and he's got a dread disease, which impairs his vocal capacity. It's taken his real voice over the years and developed using his real voice so that now, and it was limited, but he was also using sort of a predictive function when he was typing on the computer that was guessing, you know, like spell check, and you know, it completes your sentences and spellings and so on. So he was also using a variation. So it's out there, and you know, Paul McCartney has now cut a new, whatever they call it these days, I guess it's not a record, right? Revealing my age. But he's a new version of a new song using George Harrison's real voice from past recordings. So that's very possible. And the videos, you know, Tom Hanks has a movie out and so on that is coming out very soon where his younger version of himself is recreated. And so we're already seeing these things. Now, to make my point about looking forward, it's remarkable to me, the other movies. Terminator is actually one of the concerns that we should be having about AI, because that Armageddon and threat to human existence, even though there's a time travel aspect, is very real. Blade Runner, where it's very hard to tell what's a human and what's a robot. This is a real issue. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a few more artificial parts that I expected when I was younger. And, you know, there will be a day when you're not carrying a cell phone around. You know, you tweak your ear and you put somebody on hold, but it's going to be sort of all embedded probably, and you might be having other kinds of enhancements, visual and otherwise, and we're moving in that direction. So, the question of what's a robot and what's a human, one of the predictions I made when this topic was addressed, will robots replace humans, was that in 20 years, lawyers will be making more money, doing more interesting work, and many of their clients will be robots or humbots, part human and part robots. And this is a whole body of literature people are starting to look at now. What is actually, where do you have the line? We're moving in that direction. So it's kind of a very interesting thing. And then of course, there's so many of these. The classic one, 2001, A Space Odyssey, completely anticipated this machine versus, this mission-driven, out-of-control rogue machine versus humans. Where they sent Dave out saying, "Sorry, Dave, the mission is too important for me to do what you ask." So these are frightening things. Now, also throughout the history of humankind, we have always been mortally afraid of our inventions. You just think in the more recent history of, the ancient Jewish fear of this human-created golem beast. Even the Nazis were scared of the golem, and it's one of the reasons why they were a little bit on tenterhooks when they took over Prague, because they were concerned about the golem. But then there's Frankenstein, there's Jekyll and Hyde, and Terminator again, and so many of these other instances where we were very concerned. So, with all of that, it's just hard to believe now, fast forward, that it's been less than 12 months since our consciousness about AI has exploded. It's been uppermost in our minds because of the launch of ChatGPT. That's really what's brought us. Some have been very much, your speakers have been very dedicated and probably not surprised. But many of us have been much more aware and acutely aware of the issues that are posed, and there are many, many issues. The title of this talk about humans and AI have a lot to learn about each other. I think that irony captures it captures the incredible explosion of interest and hype. What did you call it? Hype chat or something? Mark, somebody had this great expression. When you were showing these slides here. What do you say?
Hype cycle?
Hype cycle. Well, I like that even better. Sorry, you're old news. Hype cycle is great. Hype cycle is the way it's going to go. That's great. So in any event, but also it demonstrates that the combination of why people are so excited, but also so concerned, and we're going to be working these things out. And it really demonstrates that we have to balance. This is my view. We have to balance the optimism that's fueled by our bold creativity, and our confidence as humans that we can handle any curveball that's thrown our way. And that has to be balanced and tempered by the pessimism of our intellect and experience. And so we need to keep both of those things in mind. So, I think it might be useful if I try to very quickly. Is there a clock in here? I want to stay on schedule. I can't see. When I'm going to pull this out, not to take a call, but okay. How much time do I have? 10 or 15? Marla says 15. She's generous. I'll try to get done faster than that. Okay. Take these questions. I wrote these questions down sitting here trying to think about what might be on your minds. Why are people late adapters? They're cautious. They're fixed in their ways. You can answer that question better than I for people that you know who just want to keep doing what they've been doing. I will tell you that lawyers are historically late adapter, and legal educators are the worst. They're the slowest adapters of anybody historically. But there's many good reasons for that. One is that at least lawyers, this is perspective from us, we like to see evidence before we change. You know, I want to see evidence. We like give and take, debate, to refine what the heck we're doing. Those things take time to develop. But also, we're very much sensitive to transitions. We like precedent, and that's not just because we're stuck in our ways. We realize that you want to treat like cases similarly, and we like precedent, and that departure from precedent can have unintended consequences. It might be the right thing, but it can have unintended consequences. And there may be people who are left out, people who have lied on a particular rule or way of doing things, and then they're discombobulated by a change, and especially if they are in a position of being less advantaged, don't have resources, in this case to buy new technology or learn how to use it and so on. So we're cautious, but that is not sufficient anymore, and we need to lean in and do better, and that's what we're trying to do at your law school, and I know that that's what the lawyers in Northeast Florida are doing, because many of them, and this is what the businesses are doing, many of them are already using, trying to figure out what the rules are and so on. So there's good reasons for people to be late adapters, but just trying to hit the pause button or to ignore change is not a remedy for success. The businesses, organizations, educators, law firms that lean in and try to learn and understand this new technology and to try to make good use of this new tool while mitigating the challenges and the downside are the ones going to have an advantage. They're going to have an advantage and they're going to be in the forefront, but they're also going to make a contribution. I mean, other questions is, will the government regulate AI and all of this? Well, the answer is government already does. Not the US government, too much. There are law in the books which are applicable, so we really could enforce existing laws, but there are over 800 laws around the world in 60 countries. The European Union has a major specific provision in its data protection area and in other areas, and so there are laws, and since all the businesses here are in a very real sense, thanks to the internet, even if you're selling, you know, JU bling in this community, you're all sending messages and possibly invoking jurisdiction to legal requirements, so you need to be attentive to this global thing. The United States has not, the United States has held some hearings, at least at the federal level, but this is going to shock you. I don't have a lot of confidence in Congress really being able to respond very quickly right now. Okay, I don't need to say anything else about that. But in that vacuum, the state municipal level, we'll be addressing things, and so we're going to have, and that's not necessarily a bad way, you know, Justice Lewis Brandeis said the states are the laboratory for change. He wasn't really talking about this kind of example. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but having a hodgepodge, as we have in privacy laws, because unlike the rest of the world, we don't have an overarching privacy law, can be problematic for business people to operate. Okay, there's so many questions and so few answers. But what I want to share with you before I stop is what keeps me up at night. You'd think that running a law school would be enough, but I have really confidence in the JU platform and the quality of the faculty and staff that are outstanding students, that it's hard work, but I'm not worrying about it. The things that worry me recently, right at the top of the pile, have been AI-related issues, and I'll just share with you what some of those are. One is the existential problem of AI's capacity to cause severe harm, if not elimination, of humans through either the use of lethal military force or biological pandemic. This is real. There are many people who are deeply concerned about this. I will share with you, there's a reason I'm telling you, not just be a downer at the end of this, but I recently, I have several friends who are in the intelligence community, military friends, including recently I had a conversation where I was briefing a friend who was applying for a deanship, and I was getting him ready for his interview, and he's a general with significant defense and intelligence responsibility. And these people will tell you that right now the conventional wisdom among the defense and security community is that it is security malpractice if there's a human in the decision chain. Now, I won't go into that in great detail, but the idea is that, well, the other guys and gals are going to use it, and we can't take the time, and, you know, sure, there's mistakes, but humans make mistakes too, and so we have to be able to deploy lethal force in certain areas in order to protect ourselves and protect the future. So that is worrisome to me, big time. And then also, well, James Cameron and Jeffrey, what is his name? Horton, the godfather of AI. There were 350 leading computer scientists and thought leaders who signed a letter that had one sentence, and that letter was, mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside the other social risks, and including pandemics and nuclear war. So these are real things. Now the problem is that no one country, you can't solve this problem unilaterally, you got to do it globally. And even raising the question creates a risk, because you put the idea in somebody else's head, and also not all the people that can pose a threat are in governments. They're in non-governmental organizations, and some of those hate our way of life and really don't give a damn if they happen to blow up the world, or at least us being, you know, the other people that don't agree with them, which is just about everybody. So this is a very real thing. And so getting at it, there's a reason I'm telling you all this, is a real challenge. It should be a priority. And you would hope that despite our differences, countries around the world who are world leaders in this area can come to agreement that we shouldn't wipe ourselves out. And there are solutions, which, to put this briefly, is if you have not guardrails after the fact, and trying to put the genie back in the bottle, but if you have a constitution, you know, you have agreed on principles going in that we agree that the AI-driven programs should not exceed their directives. They shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. They shouldn't harm without human intervention, human life, and there's other things that you can do. Now, this is still very tricky because if you put in those guardrails, they can be taken away. But still, we need to have a conversation on how to sort this stuff out. James Cameron and others are saying, well, we don't really have to worry about nuclear warfare because the machines will probably wipe themselves out with that. So what we have to worry about is they lead us into a pandemic to wipe out all the biology, leave the machines, you know, without us. But we do have remedies, including we can pull the plug out, you know, we can turn them off. It's hard to do without our stuff, but we can pull the plug out. There are other big issues which keep me up. Another issue example is making it much more difficult to determine fact from fiction, unless you're personally, physically available and you can see with your own eyes, and even then I'm not quite sure. But some people have speculated saying, well, all this weird stuff going on in the world, is it really happening, or are we kind of really living in this perceptive, challenged area? And so, in order to solve the big problems that confront us, which aren't as big as the existential ones, we need to have common facts to agree on. My old boss, Senator Moynihan, when I was chief of staff, he used to always, you've heard this quote, he said, you're entitled to your own facts, but you're entitled to your own point. You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. We can't get to agreement unless we can agree on the facts, and that's made more difficult by AI. As an educator and somebody, especially with young people, is that people at risk can be seduced into rogue programs that lead them to do bad things or harm themselves. And you've all read some of the stories it has. Now there's fixes for that, and none of these things that I'm raising as concerns are meant to suggest that we actually can pause, or that we should pause and figure out how to get the best uses out. And that we shouldn't try, and there aren't enormous benefits. And we can't pause because the inconvenient truth is that the horse is out of the barn, as all the speakers described today. And really the only choice is, how can we ride that horse to get to where we want to go without falling off in a ditch? And so that's the challenge for us. I think what I'll end on is with, we often focus on the downsides, but one of the reasons to make that effort and to figure this out, as we so far have always done in the history of humanity, is because the upsides are so big. We want to be aware of, in a very realistic way, the downsides, but we want to reach for the upsides, which are enormous. I mean, we have the capacity to attack, within our lifetime, many diseases and improve the lifespan and the quality of life of human beings and all living things. We have the capacity to deal with climate. We can figure that out with help, because in the next 50 years, we're probably, I know this is controversial and political, but we're probably going to have to make adjustments that dwarf anything in the history of humanity within the next 50 years. And so using the technology to figure this out and how best to have it have a real impact is going to be useful. We have the capacity through efficiency, you know, the industrial age, automated physical work, and look at the productivity increase and the benefits and the growth of wealth and capital in businesses. This new age of dual synthetic, biological, and digital advancement is increasing the ability to automate mental tasks. And there's a lot, as you heard, of mental tasks that were repetitive and certain kinds that make a lot of sense. And what a productivity increase we can all enjoy from that. But the challenge, if we do that, is how best to share that. And so while we're going that way, we want to reach for the upside, but we don't want to focus on not dealing with the disparities and inequality and sharing the expansion of wealth. We want to reward, among other things, the content providers, the humans who are creating things, and so on, and also be careful and always care for the folks who are left behind. This is not a new issue in the United States. When the telephone was invented, there were people who didn't have it, so then we had universal service originally started as a concept that you're going to run a line out to the farm. And you had, as a right almost, access to a party line, where there was one operator who would listen in or move you off. And then you had a right to a dial phone. But then you had more or less a right to a digital phone, because so many of the services, governmental and otherwise, are accessible by touchtone. So this is a concept that we're used to dealing with and we can work with. If I made some final recommendations, it would be pausing. Number one, recognize that pausing is not an option. Second is lean in and learn. It is the responsibility of everybody in this room who are leaders, and that's why it's your responsibility. And as students, it's your responsibility too, to learn about this as best you can. There are, if you want a couple of books to look to, there's one by Mustafa Salemka called The Next Wave, the Next Wave Coming. And he has incredible insights about where it's going, but in the first couple of chapters, he's reprising all the other things, so it's all in one place. And by the way, I don't know any of these people. I have nothing to gain from sharing that information with you. So yeah, Mustafa Soliman, The Coming Wave, AI Power, and the first 21st century technology. Another one in the biological side is The Code Breakers, written by Walter Isaacson, my Oxford classmate. The Code Breakers, it's readable. It's about those two women Nobel laureates. If you want to dive deeper, one of those Nobel Prize winners, Jennifer Dutra, wrote A Crack in Creation, just discusses their CRISPR RNA technology to empower the ability to create, in effect, life through RNA. And then, on the global issues, Henry Kissinger. The guy is still around, still kicking. It's unbelievable. Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt, former head of Google, wrote The World of AI. So there's some references. So lean in and learn. Don't be afraid. Embrace it. Try to figure it out. Make the best use you can of it. As some of our speakers said, share the benefit with your workers. Be concerned about helping them learn it, that they share the wealth, get their input, rather than trying to force feed IT on them, and we'll be just fine altogether. So, my job was to talk, yours was to listen, and I hope we finished our work at the same time.